Hello, boys and girls. Today we'll be talking about some of the Mexican culture, in particular about San Luis Potosí and Chipinque, Zacatecas. Um, my hope for you is to learn a little bit about my culture. I am Mexican, and so these are two of the states that I will be talking about today. So San Luis is this area right here, and then this is Zacatecas. San Luis is known to be the state of the dog just because it does look like a dog, and then Zacatecas is right next to it. Here's a little bit of a video about Mexico. A lot of people think that Mexico is just pure desert, but it's actually not. There is a lot of hills, there is some mountains, so it doesn't all have to be dry to be considered Mexico. This is the little house that we have in Chipinque. This is in Zacatecas, so this is not the state of the dog. This here is the house, and then on this side here is the church. Some of the customs and gestures that there are in Mexico, there are a lot of gestures. So if someone points to their elbow, it means codo, and codo tends to mean like someone who's being stingy. They will symbolize money by making kind of like a C in their hand and turning it on its side. And then a lot of people do like to do the sign of the cross. Mostly that is done when someone is passing by a church or if they are showing up to the church. Fashion in Mexico is very different from the one here in the United States. A lot of the typical farmers wear the button-up shirts and jeans followed with boots, and then a lot of people do wear these sandals, and some of the more traditional clothes is like this here. Customs and courtesies continued. The transportation in Mexico is a lot like the one here. There are some differences though. People do have their own cars, and some people do take buses. If they live in a small town and they have to go to work in a bigger town, then they will take the bus. If they are actually traveling within this town, then they will just ride a horse if they have a horse, or just walk. People there, in Chipinque, it is a very small village. There's only 213 people. And then in San Luis, the state of the dog, in the actual city of San Luis Potosí, there's 722,000 people, so that's a very metropolitan area. The language there is mainly Spanish, but there is some English speakers there, just depending on what job they have. Religion is majorly Catholic. There is some other religions there though. Some of the holidays that are celebrated in Mexico are a lot like the ones celebrated here in the United States. One that does kind of differ though is Christmas. In the Hispanic culture, Mexican culture, Christmas is usually celebrated during Christmas Eve and then the next day. Here in the United States, a lot of the families do open their gifts the morning of Christmas Day, and in the Hispanic and Mexican culture, the gifts are opened at midnight. We also have New Year's Eve and New Year's, which is Año Nuevo, and then we do have the Cinco de Mayo. A lot of people tend to think that Cinco de Mayo is the day that is Mexico's Independence Day, but it's not. It's actually just the day where Mexico won over the French during the Battle of Puebla. We also have Dia de las Madres, and that is always celebrated on the 10th of May. It doesn't matter on what day of the week it falls on, it's always the 10th. Here in the United States, it's usually the second Sunday of the month, so just whatever date that lands on. And then the 16th of September is actually Mexico's Independence Day. Holidays continued. There is a holiday that is celebrated in the town of Chipinque, or the village of Chipinque, and that is celebrated on the 26th of July. And that's just the day where they worship the saint there, and then a lot of people get together. Here's just a small video about what goes on there that day. A lot of people will get together and they will walk from a different town all the way back to this village, and then there will be people walking and singing, followed with people actually riding their horses. So that's just a little bit of that holiday there. And these are some pictures. This is actually the dancers outside of that church that I showed right next to that little house. And then this is inside of that church. This altar is always decorated with lots of flowers around this time. And then along with that, the week before that Sunday of the celebration, there is a festival going on there, so they will have stands with pizza, tacos, and then there's also a huge stand with candy. And they will have lots of dances with different styles of the cultures. And then here they do have some fireworks. These fireworks probably would not be allowed in the United States just because they are very dangerous. The reason why there is no audio to this video is because there is a lot of whistling with these fireworks, so it would be very, very loud. And so this actually goes on for about 10-15 minutes, and then followed by that, they do have some fireworks placed on top of the church. So again, probably not allowed in the United States. Another thing that the Hispanic culture celebrates is quinceañeras. It's usually kind of to symbolize the coming of age. Quinceañera means 15 years old, and this is a religious ceremony which is then followed by the reception. At the reception, there will be a father-daughter dance, and then there will be the changing of the flat to the heel with the dance following. Lifestyle of the Hispanic culture. Family is very important to the Hispanic culture. Usually in the Hispanic culture, families are very close-knit. You will know of grandparents living with their kids, or your grandparents still living with your parents. We don't really put our grandparents in care homes. And then marriage is also very important. Lifestyle continues. The social economic levels vary a lot in Mexico. It just depends on where you are. In Chipinque, it is a very low social economic village, and then in San Luis Potosí, it's just depending on what you do for a living. For work, like I said, if you do live in a smaller town and you do work in a bigger town, they will often travel. And then food is probably one of our biggest prized possessions in our culture. Food is involved with everything, whether it be if someone just shows up to your house, you offer them a plate of food, or if it's just celebrating a holiday, there always has to be food. So here is one of the main dishes that comes from San Luis Potosí, and these are called enchiladas potosinas, and then usually you always have the rice and beans with every plate, and then most of the people know us for having tacos, burritos, and tortas. So that's just a little bit of the Hispanic culture, the Mexican culture. I just hope to teach you about this culture and how beautiful it is, and just help us become more united.